Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Damme and you're watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies, and today it's time for the Flicks of the Week. If you're new here, the Flicks of the Week are where I tell you some top picks across all the major streaming services. That's going to be Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, HBO STARZ, and a few more. And then I also give you some other things to keep you entertained, a video of the week, things like that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and kick this off with our Amazon Prime recommendations, starting with a classic but a goodie, Minority Report. So on my top 10 list, the sci-fi videos are among the most popular, and Minority Report, why is that so hard to say, is a really fantastic one. It did really well when it came out, so odds are a lot of you have seen it. If by some chance you are watching this and have never seen Minority Report and you have access to Amazon Prime, definitely watch it, but this is directed by Steven Spielberg. One of the best movies he did this century, in my opinion, one of the best, and it's really, really fantastic. One of his best sci-fi movies, just really, really great stuff, really well put together, well acted, great concept, great twist, all of that. Again, if you've never seen it, it holds up today. It's grainy looking for some reason, that's how they shot it, but it holds up so well. And then because I've got a big Nicolas Cage project coming up, Bringing Out the Dead is currently on Amazon Prime, and I love this movie. Now, I'm a little biased because I'm a big fan of Martin Scorsese, and while this is not one of his best movies, it still is really fantastic. It's really entertaining. Nicolas Cage plays an ambulance driver, an EMT, and he's kind of losing his mind a little bit, and this was actually written by someone who experienced this by being in the emergency services in Manhattan, which is just a super, super intense job. This one gets a little spacey, a little crazy, but it's ultimately a really good story. Nicolas Cage gives an over-the-top, but appropriately over-the-top performance, and it's one of Scorsese's more like beautifully dark movies, kind of like Shutter Island, but this was way before Shutter Island, and it's got this great look to it that is dark yet beautiful at the same time. And then on Hulu, two more great picks. I've been talking about how Hulu doesn't have a lot of movies to choose from, but they've got some great ones. One I just watched this past week called Prospect. This is another sci-fi flick, but it's almost as if it was originally written to take place in like frontier times with like a mining aspect. You've got this father and daughter, they're on this planet and they're mining these like stones, but they come out of this like organic thing that lives in the ground. That's fairly irrelevant to the story, but if you watch it knowing that like this could easily be adapted to take place in the frontier, their gun is reminiscent of a musket. Really cool stuff, really great performances, really great story. It's a lower budget sci-fi, but it all works well. Like, they worked really well within their budget limitations, and I really, it's a gem of a watch if you haven't seen it yet, and it's a fairly recent release as well. Now, the one foreign pick I have on the list this week is, I gotta say, it's probably the best one on this list, and it's one of the newer releases. This one's actually from Denmark, I believe, but it's all subtitled, but it's well worth it. And you're gonna have to do a lot of reading on this one. I'll just go ahead and tell you, because it all takes place in a 911, I think it's 211, call center, and this cop who's manning the phones finds himself amidst like this investigation, and there's a kidnapping and there's kids involved, and he's trying to solve it and he's not really getting help. It's an amazing story. This one, my mouth was wide open. It shocked me. It's really well done. Like I said, let's just go ahead and call it the pick of the week. And I did list this one before. I did a Hulu binge watch just a couple of weeks ago. Didn't get a ton of views, but if you're interested in seeing some more picks on Hulu, I've got a link to that video in the description. And then on HBO, one of 2018's best movies, in my opinion, is Isle of Dogs. Now, this is directed by Wes Anderson, who did, the Royal Tenenbaums, The Life Aquatic, movies like that. Amazing director. But it's another stop motion from him, and this one's PG-13 because there's some graphic imagery, and it involves dogs. I think dog lovers will really like this one. I know I did as a dog lover. Even if you're not, though, the look of this movie is absolutely beautiful. I honestly think this movie got robbed by not getting nominated for Best Picture in the Academy Awards. I think it's that good. The story is great. To me, Wes Anderson used to sort of like, I always loved his movies, but the narrative would get loose in like the third act. But to me, this one and his previous film, The Grand Budapest Hotels, are his tightest films to date, and I really, really enjoyed this one. On Showtime this week, I'm recommending Revolver, which is actually a Guy Ritchie movie starring Ray Liotta and Jason Statham, and I think this is Jason Statham's best performance he's ever given. He does a great job with this one. This one's very psychological. It doesn't really take place in our world. It's got a beautiful look to it. It's a little bit messy. Like, it's not the best movie, but I personally really enjoyed this one. It gets really crazy, really wild. The whole movie is like a metaphor, like it's not real, yet I really loved what it stood for. I'm not going to spoil any of that here, but if you're interested in that, it's one of Guy Ritchie's weirdest movies, and for that, it's like right up my alley. Now, on a slightly similar note, Smokin' Aces is currently on STARZ. Whew. That was hard to say. But this is also starring Ray Liotta, Ryan Reynolds, Chris Pine plays a maniac in this one, Alicia Keys is in it. It's got an amazing cast. It's directed by Joe Carnahan, who I absolutely love his movies, and this is just an awesome movie about some assassins. It's got a lot of gunplay in it. It's got almost kind of a little bit of a John Wick vibe in the sense that it's not quite, it doesn't seem like it quite takes place in our reality, yet it's just a really fun, rated R action movie. I absolutely love this one. And then kind of breaking with that theme, there are a lot of great action sci-fi movies on Cinemax, but this week I'm actually recommending a classic, The Hustler. This one's from the early 60s. It stars Paul Newman. It's got an amazing cast, and he just plays a pool player, a hustler, but it's such a good movie. Like, if you're not one to really give older movies a chance very often, this is one you can watch. It is in black and white, and even though, yes, they are playing pool, it's not really like a sports movie. I want to say like the first 25, maybe even 30 minutes is one ongoing match, and it's just so entertaining, and then you get this like inner turmoil and this really amazing story. It really is a fantastic movie. If you ever saw The Color of Money with Tom Cruise and Paul Newman, that one's directed by Martin Scorsese. That's actually a sequel to The Hustler, and as much as I love Scorsese, I gotta say the original The Hustler is the superior film. And now for Netflix, they just released a new Netflix original movie on Friday, Point Blank. I did a full review that I had a lot of fun making. There's a link to that in the description, but I thought it was a fun action movie. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's not quite an action comedy. It gets close at times, but if you just want to watch something kind of fun that's fairly well crafted, Point Blank is a great addition to the Netflix originals. And actually, Joe Carnahan did not direct it, but he's a producer, so he is involved, and it's got a little bit of flavor because of that, I think. And then my other Netflix pick, because I like to give you two on Netflix, is Cop Car. I've mentioned this once before, but never on the Flicks of the Week, so I might as well mention it. Kevin Bacon plays a dirty cop. A couple of kids, like little kids, go for a joyride in his car, and he's got some things in there he does not want anybody to know about. And it's a fairly small story. It kind of takes place on one stretch of road, and it gets gnarlier than you would think it might get, even with me saying that. But it's just a good, tight, again, small little thriller that I really, really enjoyed. And then my show of the week, I'm gonna give you just a show recommendation every week. Doesn't mean it's a new release or something that just came out, but the second season of Barry on HBO just ended recently, and this is like one of my favorite shows. Bill Hader stars in this. He also writes it, produces it, directs a few of them, and he plays a hitman, like a legit, very efficient hitman, but this hitman is wanting to get into acting, so it's funny, yet it's very, very dramatic at times too, as he's like struggling with like wanting to stop killing people. It's got Breaking Bad elements, yet it's got some really, really funny elements. Amazing ensemble cast. It's just really, really fantastic, and they're 30 minutes, so they're a little more consumable than like these hour-long dramas that tend to drag on forever. It's one of my favorite things on TV right now. I absolutely love it. If you haven't given it a shot, watch one episode. If you don't like it, you can stop, because the first episode is a good representation of the show, even though they do get better as it goes. Before moving on to my other recommendations, if you like this type of content, please click that subscribe button and be sure to click that little bell icon so it's solid so you get notified when I put out new videos just like this one, which I do multiple times a week. In the theater this week, The Lion King, the live action looking one, it's still animated, is coming out, and that's taking over the box office. Nobody's trying to compete with that. There's nothing else coming out this week, so that's it. I'm interested to see it. I thought Jon Favreau did a really good job with The Jungle Book. He directed this one as well, and I always loved The Lion King as a kid, so I imagine it'll be pretty good. And then as far as rentals go, Shazam is a big summer movie that's already gonna be available to rent on Tuesday, and because of that, there's nothing else coming out as well. I have not seen it. I almost bought it for 20 bucks because I really wanted to see it and could not get to the theater, but at that point, by the time it's on, available to stream it, you might as well wait and rent it. So that's what I did. So I will be watching Shazam this week. And then back to sci-fi for a minute. My short of the week is called Ruin. This is actually about 6 or 7 years old at this point, but it's a really, really badass CGI sci-fi action short. It's intense. There's like a motorcycle chase and drones in this city that's overgrown. I love everything about this one. The only thing I don't like is that it's a short and not a feature. But there is a link to that in the description, along with everything else that I'm talking about. Just go down there, click on any of it, and check it out. My podcast clip of the week is my review of the movie Pledge. This was featured on a previous Flicks of the Week. If you want to see a full, sort of like 10-minute review, spoiler-free, you can click on that in the description. And it's sort of like an informal review. Instead of me chopping it and cutting it all up here, it's just me sitting and telling you about this movie. A couple of the actors may be coming on the podcast fairly soon to talk about it. Additionally, I recommended a movie called BRAID recently. If you watched it, and especially if you liked it, the director of BRAID is coming on the podcast this week to explain the movie. She's actually going to explain what all of it means, so I'm super excited for that, so stay tuned for that as well. If you're not already subscribed to the podcast, click the link in the description, click the subscribe button and the little bell so you get notified when all that content gets released. And then my video of the week, because I'm leading up to this Nicolas Cage project I've been working on, which will be right here on this channel. There's a really great video done by Wisecrack, a YouTube channel that analyzes Nicolas Cage's style of acting and sort of the influences from like old school actors and things. And so if you're someone who's been kind of confused by Nicolas Cage's sort of over-the-top performance style, this is a great video to watch. I found it really, really interesting. Again, that's done by Wisecrack, and it explores whether or not Nicolas Cage's acting style is deep or dumb. If you want to support the channel, you can do so by becoming a Patreon supporter like one of these fine people. I just broke 50 Patreon supporters last week, so be sure to thank them. As a reward, they're going to start getting patron-only live streams, which means I'm going to be able to interact with them very, very directly. I'm not going to miss any of the questions or anything. That's going to be happening this week. If you are a Patreon supporter, go over to your Patreon account, look at the Flick Connection page, and you'll see when that live stream is taking place, and the link to that live stream is only going to be available there on Patreon. But I will keep making these Flicks of the Week as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for watching this episode, and you will see me on the next one.